and and so I speak for 30 minutes, correct? All right, great. So whew, man, I'm just a little flustered because I had to rush to get over here. I had a bunch of different things going on this morning. So collecting my thoughts here, and so I'm just going to say a quick prayer here. God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about step one, everything I think I know about the physical craving, the mental obsession, and unmanageability, so that I can have a new understanding and experience with you and my relationship with alcoholism. God, thank you. All right, so um, you know, here's the crazy paradox about step one, right? Is that we're powerless over alcohol, but we don't get any power until we admit that we're powerless. And I come in here and I don't think that I'm powerless. I think that I have power. I just can't figure out why I can't figure it out, right? So it's this crazy conundrum. So when I first come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I came in here with this idea and this misunderstanding about alcohol, that alcohol was my problem. Turns out alcohol's not my problem at all. Didn't know that. Didn't know that. Certainly doesn't look like it. On the outside, it certainly looks like Eric's got a serious alcohol problem. To outsiders outside of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, they will stake their life on the fact that Eric has an alcohol problem. They'll stake their life on it, and they would be wrong. They would be completely wrong. Um, so what's interesting about this is that there are three parts to this, to step one. And the first part of step one, and you're probably wondering, well, it's powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. But there's two parts to the first part of that, right? The first part of that is that I'm powerless over alcohol, but I'm physically powerless over alcohol and I'm mentally powerless over alcohol. And then my life became unmanageable. And the big misunderstanding is that my life did not become unmanageable as the result of alcohol. It simply did not. My life was unmanageable, period. And I sought a solution in alcohol. That's the truth. The doctor's opinion makes it really, really clear. Silkworth said that the natural state of an alcoholic with no alcohol in his body is irritable, restless, and discontented, meaning that I'm a little bit edgy. I don't like my job. I'm not happy here. I don't like you. I'm not satisfied. I need another girlfriend. I was born into the wrong family. We got the wrong president. We should have had that president. We've got everything's wrong. You name it. We have to do this. We should be doing that. And the list can go on and on and on and on. Another one of the misunderstandings that I ran into when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I hear it all the time, is that, but I didn't drink every day. Say, Eric, I only drank, once every 9 months. I don't care how often you drank. It's what happens to you when you do drink. I have an older brother who goes years without drinking, years. But once he drinks, he is gone on a bender that's going to last at least a month, and he's going to end up in jail. He's going to destroy cars. He's going to get arrested. All sorts of crazy things happen to him. Now, those outside conditions, those things that I'm talking about, getting the DUI, getting arrested, and ending up in jail, guess what? None of that has anything to do with why he's alcoholic. None of it. That does not make him alcoholic, because I'll tell you, there's plenty of people that are sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous who have never had a DUI, who have never been arrested and never been to jail, but they're real alcoholics. What makes him an alcoholic is that after this extended period of time, once he puts alcohol in his body still reacts in the same way that it did the last time, which is it triggers this phenomenon of craving. He can't control how much he drinks. He no longer can stop. He can't stop on his own power. The only thing that's going to determine when he's going to stop drinking is that the alcohol runs out, he's physically removed from the alcohol, or he blacks out, passes out, rather. That's what happens to me. That's the only thing that stops me from drinking when I start drinking. I pass out, I'm physically removed from the alcohol, or the alcohol simply runs out. That's the only thing, right? But here's the thing. The insanity of that is that the phenomenon I'm craving is still on me. So I'm going to go into a really crazy state. When I'm physically removed from alcohol, I become really, really irritable. I become really, really edgy. And if that lasts a long time, eventually what happens is, despite everything in my mind that says I'm not going to drink again, I've sworn off, I don't want to go back to jail, I don't want to get arrested, I don't want to lose my wife, or I simply don't want to go on a 1 month bender. Regardless of any of that stuff, there's going to be this thought that comes into my mind that outweighs all others. And they refer to it, they talk about it in There's a Solution. It says we have this sane thought, but running parallel to it is this insane thought. right? So over here, I've got the same thought that says, you know what, Eric, probably best not to take a drink. Why don't we not drink again? You remember the last time the way that it was. You don't want to do that, right? But then I've got this insane thought over here that says, Eric, you do remember the way that it was the last time, and you certainly will not repeat that. With all the knowledge that you have, of everything that you've learned, everything that you've been through, you will certainly not repeat that. You know your limits, right? And I'm going to believe that insane thought. And for some trivial reason, like the Eagles won the football game, or a safety, or whatever, you name it, pick it, for some trivial reason, I'm going to say it's celebration, or it's just Friday, or it just seems like a good idea. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. No other reason. I'm going to pick up that drink, and when I put that alcohol in my body, I'm going to trigger that phenomenon of craving, and I'm going to be off to the races. And I'm not going to be able to control when I'm going to stop. And then what happens is that there's this switch that flips in my head once I put that alcohol in my body, is that I think that I have changed my mind. I think that I've changed my mind and that it's okay for me to continue to drink. But really, I really don't have any power of choice in that matter. I simply don't have any power of choice in that matter. But we hear all the times in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, just avoid alcohol, change people, places, and things, right? That's what you hear. Change people, places, and things. If you do that, if you avoid alcohol, then you'll be okay. Know your triggers. You got to know your triggers, right? And all of those things sound right. They're good for someone who has a problem with alcohol. Because if you only have a problem with alcohol, knowing your triggers is going to be very, very helpful. You will be able to avoid alcohol. But if you have alcoholism, meaning that alcohol is not your problem, it's your solution, those triggers aren't going to work for you. And it talks about this idea, we hear about it in the rooms, you got to keep your memory green. You got to think the drink through, think it through, think it through, think it through, right? All of this stuff. But it warns us in the book. It says that at certain points in times, the alcoholic's not going to be able to bring into his memory with sufficient force the pain and suffering of a week or even a month ago. He's going to be without a defense against that first drink. So keeping my memory green works really well, right up to the point that I can't keep my memory green, and this insane thought comes in that blocks out all else. I can't bring in a sufficient force the pain and suffering of a week or a month ago, and now the drink looks like a good idea, and I'm going to believe that insane thought, and I'm going to pick up that drink and I'm going to drink again, right? And then what happens is that if I've been sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, like here right now, this isn't the program. I'm talking about the program, but this isn't the program. This is the fellowship. The program is something that we work, something that we experience. The fellowship is something where we're going to hopefully talk about the idea about what our experience is like with this program. But if I'm not in the right meetings, I'm going to sit in a fellowship meeting and we're just going to be talking a lot about drinking and feeling good and about changes that we've made in our lives and how we've gained improvement, and it's better than our wildest dreams. But I want to tell you that I sat in the rooms for AA for a long time listening to those things. And one of the things that I did was they tell you not to compare yourself, but I got news for you. I compared myself, and I'm glad I compared myself. Today, I am glad I compared myself, because what I know for sure is that when I hear someone say, hey, my name's Joe Blow, I've got 10 years or I got 20 years, I haven't had a drink, I don't work the steps, and my life's better than my wildest dreams, I know for sure they are not like me. And I can just simply disregard anything that they're going to say, because they are not like me. Because if they can just not drink and their life gets better than their wildest dreams, they suffer, or they don't suffer, rather, from something that I don't suffer from. It's much different. What I suffer from is alcoholism. So when I sit in these rooms, and I spend a number of years sitting in these rooms, not drinking, going to meetings, and I don't have a solution, to bring me some sort of satisfaction, some sort of comfort, right? What's going to happen is I'm going to grow worse. My disease is progressive whether I'm drinking or not. And I'm going to get progressively worse sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll arrive at a point where I want to put a bullet through my head, but I'm going to want to put a bullet through yours too. So you better duck, right? That's the way that it is. That's untreated alcoholism. Now, you may or may not want to shoot other people. That's just where I ended up. But you may end up in the place where I was at, where you're irritable, restless, and discontented, and it's going to look however it looks for you. But you're not happy, you're not satisfied, and you're wondering what you're missing, and you're wondering why it isn't working for you, because you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing. You're making the meetings, you're a member of a group, you're setting up coffee, you're hosting Zoom meetings, you're going to the diner, you're doing all of these things, right? and you're into action, but really what you're into is activity, right? We're not into the action that they talk about, that they describe in the big book. We're just into this activity, and we're wondering why it's not working. And the reason why it's not working, at least for me, was because I was trying to solve my own problem on my own power. And the book makes it really, really clear is that lack of power, that was my dilemma, not alcohol. Alcohol was never my dilemma. Lack of power was my dilemma. I didn't know that when I first came in. I came in here addressing an alcohol problem, and I couldn't understand why it was getting worse and worse and worse. While some of you seem to be getting better. And then other people would sit there and say, well, you're just making poor choices, Eric. You've got to choose to be happy today. That's like going over to the homeless dude over there and saying, hey, homeless dude, just get a home, right? He just chooses to be homeless. He prefers to be homeless. That's absolutely insane. That's absolutely insane. It's like going to the manic depressive and just saying, hey, dude, calm down and cheer up. Like they have any choice in that matter, right? And for me to sit here and say, hey, Eric, just stop being irritable, restless, discontented. Choose happiness today. Choose not to drink today is a total misunderstanding of what it is that I suffer from. Total misunderstanding. So the first step tells me that I'm powerless. That means that I am without power. So I'm powerless over alcohol when it goes into my body because I got this phenomenon of craving, this allergy. And this sets me apart as a distinct entity from other people, right? Now, here's the tricky thing that we have to try to figure out for ourselves is that later on in the book, it's going to make clear the distinction between the hard drinker and the alcoholic. And sometimes the hard drinker looks an awful lot like the alcoholic, but they're not. They're not alcoholic. Because at a certain point in time, a doctor, the wife, the judge, something will be presented to them which will be sufficient enough for them to quit drinking or to control it, and they'll be able to pull that deal off on their own power. They may need a rehab. Plenty of hard drinkers have gone to rehab and walked out and never drank again. Plenty of hard drinkers have gone to rehab and walked out and they can drink normally. No doubt about it. Plenty of alcoholics have never been to a rehab, walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, heard this message, got it, and recovered. So there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. But the thing that I can tell you is that there's this big difference between a non-alcoholic and an alcoholic. And that is that the alcoholic at a certain point in time, for whatever the reason is, will not be able to control his desire for alcohol, and he will succumb again. I will pick up the drink, guaranteed. Why is that? Because the main problem centers in my mind, not in my body. I want to repeat that. The main problem centers in my mind, not in my body. That part the first part is the main problem centers in my mind is not that my mind is the problem. My mind is not the problem. The problem centers in my mind, but my mind is not the problem. The problem centers in my mind. There is this little part of my mind, for whatever reason, I am insane with regard to alcohol. I am perfectly sane with regard to my kitchen stove. I am not going to put my hand on it when that thing is red. Not going to do it. I won't do it. I've had that experience. Not going to touch it. I'm perfectly sane with regard to my dog. He doesn't like other dogs. He doesn't play nice. He doesn't want to be nice to other dogs. He doesn't like strangers. So when I walk him, I know that I have to walk him in an area where there are no other dogs and tell people, no, I'm sorry, you can't say hi to my dog because he really doesn't want to make friends with you. I am sane in that regard. I understand it. I get it. I get it. But when it comes to alcohol, I am insane. Now you hear in rooms, don't drink no matter what. Dr. Silkworth, and I believe this is probably where it comes from. Maybe not, maybe not. But Dr. Silkworth talks about this idea that the only relief that we have to suggest for the alcoholic is complete total abstinence. Abstinence, to abstain from the alcohol altogether. But he's referring to one aspect of it. He's only referring to the phenomenon of craving. That's it. He says, if you don't want to trigger the phenomenon of craving, abstain. Do not put alcohol in your body in any form at all, for any reason at all, and you will not trigger the phenomenon of craving. That sucker will disappear and it'll be gone forever. Not the allergy, but the craving will be gone. You do not have to worry about it. The next paragraph goes on, and in the midst of that paragraph, he says that the chronic alcoholic is doomed. That the chronic alcoholic, they're not going to be able to abstain from alcohol for a period forever. There may be extended periods of time in between, but it will not last. Why? And I had already mentioned it earlier. It's because the center, the problem of the problem, the main problem for the main problem for the alcoholic centers in the mind. It's in my mind that there's going to be that moment. There's that thing in my mind that's going to lead me back to alcohol, which means that I'm insane. So when I worked with my sponsor, one of the exercises that we did was write down the 10 most insane things that you did while you were drinking, right? And I wrote down some crazy things. And we went over them and he said, "Wow, those are pretty crazy." I said, "I know, it's nuts, right?" And he said, "Yeah, because do you think that that's the answer that I'm looking for?" And I said, I don't know. I don't know what, I'm not sure exactly. He said, "Do you know what the most insane thing is that you ever did with regard to alcohol?" And I said, "Well, I just gave you the 10, the 10 most insane things I ever did." He said, "No, they don't even come close." I said, "Okay, I'm open." He said, "The most insane thing you did with alcohol was when you were stone cold sober, no alcohol in you whatsoever, is you picked up a drink again, expecting different results, that this time it was going to be different." He said, "That's the most insane thing you've ever done with alcohol." I can't argue that. That's absolute insanity. Knowing the way that I react to alcohol, knowing the things that happen when I drink, knowing that who knows how long I'm going to be out there drinking, no telling what the results are. I look at my history, annihilation of everything worthwhile in life. I've lost my family, I've lost my kids, I lost my wife, I've lost my job, I've lost my home, I've lost everything. Yet when I'm stone cold sober, after keeping my memory green for a period of time, when a thought occurs to me that it's a good idea for me to take a drink, I say, "Yeah, I think so too. I think I'm going to trust me on this and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a drink. I'm just going to go ahead and take that drink because it's going to be different. And I'm going to tell you why it's going to be different." And then I'm off to the races again. And then when I get sober, I sit there and I say, "I have no idea how that happened. Why did I do I why do I do this over and over?" Because see, sanity always returns for a brief moment. And it always returns after that run. And then we have all of that guilt and that shame. And we sit there and we say, "I don't know why I do it. Why do I do it?" And if I could stay in that moment, I might be okay, but I'd never stay in that moment. And then it's never stay in that moment. There's another day. The sun rises again tomorrow. And then suddenly on that day, seems like, well, maybe I'm just a paranoid overreaction. Maybe it's not so bad after all. Maybe I do have a hold of this. Maybe it will be okay. But the truth is that I'm going to repeat it over and over and over again unless something happens. And Dr. Silkworth talks about that psychic change. He talks about that psychic change. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to get too far into that psychic change. I'm going to touch upon it because I think tomorrow Lovey's coming in to talk about step 2, which is going to be a real treat for you guys. She's amazing. If you haven't heard Lovey, you really want to be here for her. So what happens is that so we understand, or at least I've talked about, I feel rather sufficiently, the first half of the first step, that we understand we've got this insane thought that I simply can't control. I've got no power over my mind with regard to alcohol. I have no power over my body with regard to alcohol. But then there's the second half of the first step. The second half of the first step is that my life is unmanageable. My life is incredibly uncomfortable. I'm really irritable. I'm really restless. I mean, I'm just miserable, stone cold sober, right? It just sucks. It's hard. Like, I mean, if I had a full head of hair, then I'd be okay. But when I had a full head of hair, I'd think, God, if I looked like Jason Statham and shaved my head, then I'd be okay, right? If I get jacked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, then I'd be all right. But John Goodman, he looks like he's having a pretty good life. Maybe if I put on 250 pounds, maybe then I'll be okay. If I had a blonde wife instead of a brunette wife, maybe I'd be okay. Maybe if I had no wives, I'd be much better off, right? Maybe if I have a side piece, maybe it's my kids. Maybe if I had sent them to a different school, if I just didn't send them there, maybe their politics and their belief about society would be different today, and then I'd be okay. I mean, you name it, you pick it, whatever it is, whatever it is. I listen to more Tony Robbins videos than you can shake a stick at, right? In the book, in We Agnostics, We Agnostics starts to go into step 2, but really we're looking at it from a couple different ways, because step 1 is this, the second half is that my life's unmanageable, and step 2 is this idea that, and discovering, step 1 is discovering that I don't have power, so I have lack of power. And if I haven't arrived at that point with those 3 pertinent ideas, here I'm just going to go over there, and I'm not going to read all the pertinent ideas because it's not relevant right now, but what is relevant is this. Give me 2 seconds here. So it says that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. That's the first pertinent idea. If I'm not convinced of that one, if I'm not convinced of that, I'm going to have a hard time here. I'm still going to think that I've got the power and I've got a solution. I just need to try harder and I got to figure it out. That's what I'm going to believe. So I got to give the crazy thing is that I've got to admit that I don't have any power in order to gain power. And that's where I'm at, right? Right. That we're alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. That probably no power could have relieved our alcoholism. The next two are going to be about what Lovey's going to be talking about tomorrow, right? But if I have arrived at this point that we were alcoholic and cannot manage our own lives, what's that look like to me? What's that looks like to me is that no matter what, I can't get satisfaction out of this life. Page 51 talks about it really well. It says, leave aside the drink question. Just get the drink out of your mind. Forget about the drinking. Forget about, we're beating to death to drinking. Let's just talk about life. Are you satisfied, man? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Do you wake up in the morning, spring out of bed, and you're ready to rock and roll? Are you excited to go out there into the world? Are you happy to see the people that you see? The people that aren't happy to see you, are you okay with the fact that they're not happy to see you? Do you go to that job and you're there to really perform a job? Are you really of use to other people? Real use, like making an impact in their life. Not like, yeah, I was useful, I held the door for that woman, but like making an impact in people's lives. True purpose. Are you a prey to misery and depression? Are you miserable? Are you depressed? Are you sad? Are you dissatisfied? Are you filled with excuses why your life sucks? Do you have an existentialist, perspective on life? Life sucks, always gonna suck. Go to a sucky ending, sucky death, sucky afterlife. It all just sucks. The way it is, might as well drink. Might as well get my solution. That's where I was at. That's the second half of the first step. My life's unmanageable. If I could get her to love me, and if I could get her to love me the way that I need her to love me, then I'll be okay. If I could get him off my back, and if I could get him all the way off my back and then get him to celebrate me, then I'm going to be all right. If that Rogaine would have worked, then I'd be okay. Then I'd be more attractive and I'd have that girl, right? All of those things. All of those things that this is all part of that step one. This is all this stuff that brings me back to that day that for whatever reason I'm walking down the street, I walk past that bar and I hear that music, and that music sounds just a little bit better today than it did the other day. And I hear the clanking of those glasses, man. I say, wow, there's something going on in there. There's something going on in there. And then I smell the wine and the liquor and the whiskey and the steak and all the food, and I hear that music and the laughter. And what happens is there's this thing that inside of me, it starts to expand and it says, Eric, get that in you. Get that in you. If you get that into you, you're going to feel whole again. You're going to be a-okay. You're going to be a-okay. I live in Princeton, and I live in downtown Princeton, so I have cars, but I have a pedestrian lifestyle for the most part. I can walk anywhere that I want in town, and often in the evenings during the spring and summertime, I'll take my dogs out for a walk. Except Mr. Grumpy back there, I will leave him behind because that's take him in other areas. The ones that can go around people, I take downtown, and so when I'm downtown, there's this bar. It's called the Ivy, and there have been a number of times that I've sat there on the other side of the street and I just listen to those guys and I can hear the pool. I can hear the clanking of the balls when they shoot the pool. And I can hear the music. And then I hear people singing karaoke. And I can smell the liquor. And I can hear people laughing. And I can see the girls outside. And I see those bright neon lights inside and outside. And I see people dancing. And there's a part of me that sits there and says, man, gosh, if only I could drink like them. I think I can drink like them. Right? Right? And that's that part again in the doctor's opinion. It says we're irritable, restless, and discontented unless we can experience that sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which we see others taking with impunity. And what I'm doing is I'm witnessing people, for the most part, as far as I can see, drinking with impunity. And I long to be able to drink like them and hang out there with them. There is this longing inside for this sense of companionship, for this sense of wholeness, and so on, deep inside of me. For whatever reason, my mind simply believes that the only way that I can achieve that and receive that is through alcohol. And it continues to lead me back there. Sometimes I sit there in that fantasy, right? I've been restored to sanity, so I recognize when this is happening. But there is a part of me, not so much anymore, that used to sit there and say, God, what I wouldn't give to be able to drink like those guys. But the truth is that I would never be able to drink like those guys. Never, because the way that they're drinking isn't a whole lot of fun to me. It appears fun. That's the thing that leads me back there. That's the insanity. That's the lie. But once I get that alcohol in me, the truth is that I like to drink like a fish. The truth is that I'm an absolute pig. The truth is that I like to break out fights. I like to start trouble. You know, when I start drinking, I'll turn that bar upside down. I would be leaving in handcuffs, or I'd be beat up, leaving in an ambulance. That's the truth. But my mind doesn't tell me that. My mind doesn't tell me that. And that's the insanity of all of this. So if I don't find a way to find comfort, to find satisfaction in my life when I'm sober, I can guarantee you the first step promise will come true in my life. And that first step promise is this: I will drink again. The real alcoholic will drink again. That is the first step promise. So when I hear people say I have to work the first step perfectly every single day, I think you really misunderstand the first step, because if you're working the first step perfectly every day, you'll be seeking God like your life depends upon it, because you'll recognize the need for it. And that's what I recognize today, is that having gone through this first step, I know that I have zero power to keep myself sober. I have zero power to bring any type of satisfaction into my life that's going to be enough to keep me sober for the rest of my life. I don't have it. And I've tried every philosophical conviction. I've had morals. I know what it means to be a good person. I know what it means to be a nice person. I know what it means to be honest and thoughtful and considerate, good moral living, but I simply do not have the power to pull it off. I don't have the power to live that way. I have sought philosophical comfort through every single Tony Robbins video. I have torn up YouTube going through all of those different videos, inspirational speakers, and they all sound good while I'm sitting there listening to them. But once the video is over, I am back to being uncomfortable and irritable and restless and discontented, because regardless of how good all of that sounds, I simply don't have the needed power to live by that philosophy. I don't have it. I don't have it. Carl Jung, in his letters with Bill Wilson, said, and I'm going to probably mangle this. I don't see the book. I know it's around here somewhere. He talked about the idea that on the low level, on a low level, what alcoholics really are searching for when they drink is a union with God. Is a union with God. The very first time I felt the effects of alcohol, I went from feeling less than and inadequate, stupid, ugly, you name it, horrible, horrible, terrible things, to instantaneously, I felt tall, intelligent, handsome, hopeful. I knew life was going to be a-okay. I had that spiritual connection. I had a spiritual connection with God. I've got to get back to that place. Now, how can I get back to that place, but without alcohol? Something with something that isn't going to destroy me. And if I don't recognize that in the first step, I don't understand the first step yet. I simply don't understand the first step. And if I don't understand the first step, I am never going to pursue the rest of the steps the way that they need to be pursued in order for me to recover from alcoholism. It's simply not going to happen, right? Bill talked about it. He said, man, I am so desperate. I'm like a man drowning in the sea. Am I that desperate? So when I go through this, and I recently went back through this with a new sponsor, I discovered some things about myself that brought that desperation back. I started to understand my alcoholism on a much deeper level. What I started to realize was that there was a lurking notion in the back of my head. I had this reservation that since I came in young and I'd been here for such a long time, that perhaps I'm Mr. Carpet Slippers man, that perhaps at a certain point, I'll be able to sit back and maybe I'll be able to take a drink. Not, it wasn't glaring, but I was thinking maybe I am the exception to the rule, that at some point in time, but the book tells us that that has to be smashed and destroyed, because no matter how long that lasts there, if that stays there, there's a darn good chance that at some point in time, I'm going to pick up that drink. That had to be smashed. And I recognized that. And what I recognized was that was a chink in my armor. And that was something, that belief right there was holding me back from a deeper, more meaningful surrender that I was going to have to start to face in step 2 and 3 and through the rest of the steps. I don't know where I'm at for the time. I'm probably very close. Am I done? 2 minutes? 2 minutes? Right. So when I arrive at this point, when I arrive at this point, that I recognize that I'm powerless over alcohol physically, I'm powerless over alcohol mentally, and that I am powerless over my life out here. I simply don't have any power. And I truly recognize that. And I know that in my core, then I understand step 1. But if I still think that I have to avoid alcohol and I have to change people, places, and things, and that I got to keep my memory green, and that somehow I'm going to be able to pull my life off if I just do the next right thing, and if I can come up with some sort of moral and philosophical conviction or some sort of idea, a game plan to live my life, to be happy, to be okay, like hot yoga, a vegan lifestyle, if I think that these things are going to do it, I totally miss step 1. I totally miss it. And I'm going to sit here and suffer. So if I arrive at the point where I need to be in step 1, I arrive at a point where I'm filled with desperation and I'm willing to do whatever I have to do that's next. And how it works, it says, talks about this idea about willing to go to any lengths. I heard someone say recently, oh, I had to be willing to go to the lengths to leave my children. That's not what we're talking about, guys. That is not what we're talking about. I know that story, and those were different lengths that she was going to for another reason. Believe me, what we're talking about here, are you willing to go to any lengths to seek God? To seek God. That's really what it comes down to. Tomorrow, Levy's going to come in and talk about step 2. She'll most probably touch on those 3 pertinent ideas. And after I arrive at that point with those 3 pertinent ideas, it's a launch pad. It's a launch pad. So hopefully, if I've done my job here today, some of you are feeling pretty darn desperate, or you recognize the desperation. Thank you so much for the honor and privilege to come in and share with you guys. I appreciate y'all.